In this story, an unknown terrorist organization holds workers of the Indonesian embassy hostage and demands the release of their members and $100 million to keep the hostages alive. The government sends in local special forces, but the terrorists take them out like bugs, and they set up mines around the building so it's impenetrable by even a ghost. Speaking of ghosts, there's a secret operative called the Geist, the ghost, who is known to never fail at a mission, but the terrorists believe it's just a legend. While they're still chatting, someone slips in and guts 5 squads of the armed terrorist group with just a blade, and they're unable to hit him with a bullet no matter how hard they try. After Geist takes them down, someone watches the recording of the whole thing and rejoices at how cool he moves. The man confesses that it's great to watch him work no matter how many times he watches it. Apparently, this is 3 years into the future, and the man is watching how the embassy hostage crisis was resolved. The man tells Geist that this is one of his favorites out of all his jobs, and he adds that this footage was secretly filmed with a special recon camera developed by their company. He looks back at Geist, who's tied to a chair, and he asks him where exactly he came from because his background is a mystery. The man tells Geist that he's a big fan of him because he's a legend who can take down 10,000 enemies all by himself. He adds that it's a shame to witness him being defeated by his insignificant, cowardly, dirty little scheme. He finds it pitiful that the ghost he admired so much would be taken out by a fleeting human emotion. The man points a gun at Geist's head and asks him if he has any last words, but Geist tells him not to think it's so easy to kill Geist the ghost. The man is pleased he finally got Geist to speak, but he believes he's just smiling as a bluff to hide his frustration. Eventually, the man mentions that he saved the child Geist found, and that makes Geist enraged. Immediately, the man fires a bullet at the legendary Geist, and he considers how boring the death of this legendary man is. Sometime later, Geist finds himself in the darkness, and he wonders where he is. He suddenly remembers that he was shot in the head by that man, and he wonders why he's not dead. He remembers the strong feeling of rage in his heart, and he wishes to find a way not to let it end like this. He considers it pathetic that he let his guard down because of that pathetic guy, and he realizes getting emotional is a failure as a professional. He can feel himself running, and he keeps hearing someone tell him to stop running, so he wonders why it's so noisy. Suddenly, he feels like he was hit in the back of the head, and he hears the footsteps of a man, and he guesses his height and body structure. When he opens his eyes, he finds a muscular man trying to hit him with a stick, but he quickly moves out of the way before he's hit. This annoys the big guy who thought he had knocked him out with the last hit. This confuses Geist, and he wonders who this guy is. The big guy dashes towards him again, so Geist decides to defend himself even though he doesn't know what's going on. When the guy comes close, he punches him in the face. However, the guy doesn't seem fazed, and he asks Geist what the wimpy punch he just landed was about. The guy grabs him and throws him on his head, and Geist wonders why his attack had no effect. He was certain his punch connected, but when he looked at his reflection, he realized this isn't his body, and he couldn't recognize who it is. Geist wonders whose face he now has, but the bully behind him runs toward him to impale him with a stake. The guy tries to pin Geist down, but he suddenly disappears from under him, shocking the big guy. By his side, Geist looks at him, so the big guy angrily asks him where he learned to move like that as opposed to just letting him crush him obediently. The big guy comes in to punch Geist again, but he dodges the attack. Next up, the big guy swings his wooden stake and Geist dodges that too. He realizes that the big guy's movements are simple and easy to read, so he should be able to dodge him. However, the issue is that this new body of his can't keep up with all his thoughts and techniques. Judging from the last hit, he knows that it'll be difficult to defeat the big man if he just fights the way he normally does. This time, he decides to change strategy, so he pours some of the dirty water on the ground in his face to distract him. When the big guy cleans his face, he looks around and finds out that Geist is gone. While he wonders where he went, Geist watches him from the top of a tree. He realizes that whoever owned this body barely exercised because of how out of breath he is just from climbing a tree. Firstly, he decides to assess the situation he's in. He remembers that he was shot in the head by a man with a terrible voice, and now he's in the body of a young man that he doesn't know. Judging from the uniform, he figures that he's in high school, but he still wonders where on earth he is. When he looks around, he sees that he's in a park surrounded by office buildings, and the scenery seems to look familiar to him. He recalls that the words on the blonde guy's shirt were Japanese, so he wonders if he's in Japan. He also wonders why he's in the body of a weak young man and why the blonde guy is attacking him. Soon after, the blonde guy finds him on the tree, so he tries to climb to get him. When he gets on the tree, the huge guy tells him that he won't let him get away again. He tries to cut Geist with the stick, but he quickly dodges and jumps backwards to another branch. This starts to tire the big guy, so he asks Geist why he's suddenly moving like a different person all of a sudden. However, Geist notices a sharp pain in his wrist, and he wonders if he broke it from trying to use this weak hand to cushion his fall. Since he's getting cold from being in the rain and after injuring his right hand, he realizes that this body won't last much longer. However, the big guy mentions that he can't believe that the weakling who looks like he's never been in a fight is participating in this fight battle. Geist wonders what he means by fight battle, but the big guy tells him that Geist's participation means an easy payday for him. From those words, Geist realizes that it's a battle where one gets money to win, so he starts to get what's going on. Eventually, Geist tells the big boy that he's going to teach him something. The big guy wonders what on earth he's going on about and why his personality has suddenly changed. Geist tells him that his movements are full of wasted effort and he's putting too much power into his fists, which is why it's easy to predict his move. He tells him that he'll never be able to hit him at this rate no matter how much he swings. This annoys the big guy, so Geist also tells him that he seems to talk a lot, and he tells him that his voice and manner of speech are unpleasant to the ear. Geist tells him he'd appreciate it if he kept quiet during the fight, and when he continues, the big guy jumps at him in rage and tells him to stop saying all this crap to him. The big guy threatens to kill him, but Geist's eyes light up in a deadly way. And for some reason, the big guy starts to panic. He swings his stick to hit him, but Geist dodges it. In a sudden turn of events, some vines catch the big guy's leg, and he dangles from the tree. He demands to know what's going on, but Geist runs towards him and slams his knee into his face, causing blood to spurt out. In deep pain, the big guy wonders what's going on, and he asks Geist if he set a trap in the tree so quickly. Geist tells him he knew he would climb up because his moves are quite obvious, and he adds that it's easy to make something like this with vines. Geist says the hard part was to get him to fall for the trap, and the big guy soon realizes that Geist said all those things to provoke him on purpose. Geist soon grabs the stick and points it at the guy's neck, demanding that he supply information to him about who he is and why he's after him. Confused, the big guy asks him what nonsense he's talking about, so he reminds him that he knew what he was getting into when he joined the fight battle. Geist tells him to explain what fight battle means, but when the guy refuses to say anything, Geist tries to stab him with the stick. Before he can do that, the big guy says he gives up, but Geist doesn't know what he means. Suddenly, a nearby voice accepts the big guy's surrender, and Geist realizes the voice came from his phone. When he brings out the phone, he learns that they're in a battle called the Susanoo Rank Battle, and the match is between Kisuke Sakuraba and Yoshio Kudo. Apparently, the body he possesses belongs to a guy named Kisuke, and he's declared the winner. Looking at the screen, Geist realizes the fight was being streamed, so he asks Yoshio what these people in the comments are saying. Annoyed, Yoshio knocks the phone out of his hand because he felt he was bragging by showing him the comments. Yoshio laments that his prize money is gone, so he tells Kisuke to let him down, but Geist just kicks him in the face again and knocks him out for being too loud. He tries to turn the phone back on, but it doesn't turn on because it's drenched in the water. Later, he finds the personal belongings of Kisuke, and he soon realizes that his soul has entered into this person's body. When he checks the ID card, he learns that Keisuke is 17 years old, but he wonders who he is. Even though he has a lot of questions, he decides to go to the address written on Keisuke's student address so he can get info. Geist walks through a place called the Izumi Shopping District, and he realizes that Japan never changes. Suddenly, he hears a lady scream when a thief snatches her bag and starts to run. The guy runs towards Geist, who thought Japan was supposed to be safe. Until he gets a handle on the situation he's in, he decides not to get into any trouble and keep moving. However, the lady screams out to plead for help again, and that makes Geist remember the kid he tried to save in his past body. When the thief runs past him, Geist grabs his arm, causing the guy to drop the bag. While the guy is shocked, Geist throws him to the ground and subdues him by twisting his arm backward while he's still on the ground. As usual, Geist's body is surrounded by the strange killing aura he has when he's fighting, and his eyes change to the color blue. Suddenly, he returns back to normal, and he's surrounded by several people in the district. The lady whose bag was stolen, Monica, rushes through the crowd, and another friend of hers, Chinatsu, signals to her to come closer. When they get there, the ladies can't believe that it's Chinatsu's big brother, Kisuke, who pinned the guy down. Chinatsu asks Kisuke what he's doing, so he realizes that he seems to have gotten himself into trouble. After they're questioned by the police and released, Chinatsu asks Kisuke if he's always been secretly strong this whole time, but he doesn't want to tell her. While he's thinking, Monica tells Chinatsu she should know Kisuke wouldn't hurt a fly, so Geist finally gets an idea of something he has no choice but to use. When Chinatsu asks him why he's so quiet, he changes his demeanor and says he was quite scared. He tells them he just stuck his arm and leg out and it all happened by chance. He rushes to Chinatsu to ask her if she's okay, and the ladies finally calmed down that he's returned back to normal. Later, Chinatsu asks him where his glasses are, so he says they broke when he fell earlier that day. Chinatsu asks him if he's okay, but Manaka tells him he's so clumsy. After the ladies leave, Geist returns back to his normal self, and he figures that he played Kisuk's personality pretty accurately. After that, he decides to organize the information he got from the police questioning. From the info, he learned that the older girl is Monica Nanes, a 17-year-old girl who's also Kisuk's childhood friend and a classmate at the same high school. The other girl is Chinatsu Sakuraba, a 13-year-old girl who is Kisuk's younger sister. Apparently, the Sakuraba family consists of 2 siblings, but their parents have passed away, and Monica has known the siblings since they were children. Just before Monica was out grocery shopping for dinner with Chinatsu, and that's when they ran into a purse snatcher. Based on the information from the personal items in Monica's bag, Geist learns that Kisuk is kind and is devoted to his sister. His grades are above average, but his athletic ability is poor. Kisuk seems to just be an ordinary high school boy, so he wonders how he ended up in the Susanoo rank battle. While they're walking home, Geist stops Manaka and asks her about Chinatsu's condition. Monica tells him she's stable today, but an attack could happen at any time. Monica promises to be careful while Chinatsu's temporarily out of the hospital, and Geist realizes his suspicions were right. He could deduce from the way Chinatsu was walking that there was something seriously wrong with her heart. Later, Monica asks Geist why his clothes are so dirty, so he lies that it was raining earlier and he fell into a puddle. She looks at him suspiciously, then she tells him she hopes he didn't let Sakia sweet-talk him just because he desperately needs money. She adds that she hears that Sakia has been hanging out with a bad crowd and he's doing shady part-time jobs. And she also reminds him that Sakia almost punched him the other day. For a while, Geist stands there surprised, but he later cooks up a smile and thanks her for the advice. Later, he considers everything Monica said about Sakia and money, so he finally starts to understand what's going on. It's clear that Kisuk needs money for the surgery that will cure his sister's illness, and he got into the streamed fight as a means to get that money. That night, he spends some time fixing his drenched phone, so he figures that this Sakia must be the person who arranged it, and Kisuk was likely caught up in a crime. He finally gets his phone turned on, and he's shocked to see the icon of the Susanoo rank battle there. The scary part is that he remembers seeing the same icon on the lapel that the man who killed him was wearing. He plugs the phone into a computer to see if he can hack into the app, but he's unable to because the protection is tight and the laptop he's using is consumer grade. He knows the app is the one for the Susanoo event and they probably use it to film and broadcast everything. But he wonders why the icon is the same one on the badge the man was wearing. He still can't figure out the connection between him and Kisuk, but he doesn't believe this is a coincidence. He knows that his death and Susanoo are connected in some way and that the man who killed him is behind this app. Geist goes online to research the Susanoo app and he gets conflicting views about whether it's real, and several people seem to be wary of it. Susanoo is a battle event where you gain the right to participate by installing an app that can be obtained through a dark route. The location and time of the battle are randomly matched by the app, and the match immediately begins. They secretly broadcast the fight nationwide using the latest film technology. There are also dark rumors that the app's parent company is connected to government agencies, so that might explain why the illegal activities haven't been prosecuted, which means someone might be covering them up. Even though folks on the internet don't know if it's real, Geist knows it is, and it's clear from the 1 million yen that was transferred to his account for winning the last fight. Geist realizes that the organization behind the app must have ridiculous influence, but the shocking part about this whole thing is that it's been 5 years since Geist actually died. The day he was murdered was May 11th, 2023, which was exactly 5 years ago. Geist figures that the reason he might not have heard about Susanoo or the organization running it while he was alive is because they rapidly grew in the 5 years after he died. He also wonders if they grew so fast because he died. Perhaps they might have known that he would track down the app's developer and crush them because he had infiltrated their organization at that time. He wonders if this is why that man used his sister to kill him in his past life. While he's thinking, a lady named Kanai enters the house and loudly announces her arrival. From his research, Geist knows this is Kisuk's aunt, so he decides to keep going with Kisuk's personality, and he cheerfully welcomes her home. He thanks her for her hard work as always, but she jumps on him and tells him to remove the honorific in her name and call her Kanai-chan because it makes her sad when there's a wall between them. Geist still calls her Kane-san and tells her she's being too loud and will wake up Chinatsu, who's in the bedroom. Eventually, Kane tells him he doesn't have to worry about Chinatsu's expenses because she's going to handle it. While she's talking, she notices his glasses are gone. And while he thinks of something to say, she tells him he looks handsome without them. She jokes that she'd go on a date with him if she were a little younger, but she suddenly starts vomiting. Geist goes to check on her, so she complains that she feels sick. While he's helping her, Geist suddenly notices a notification on his phone that the next battle has been matched. The next day, on Saturday, Geist decides to cut off his bangs so they don't get in the way of his fight, and he ditches the glasses. Kisuk seems to have had bad eyesight before he took over, but Geist realizes that his eyesight is top-notch now. However, the issue is that Kisuk's body is physically weak, so he'd have to train up for the future. Even though he feels bad for the previous owner, he knows he's going to be borrowing this body for his own purposes for a while. While that's going on, Chinatsu is at the hospital for a checkup, and Kane has gone to work on her day off, so they'll both be home late. Geist decides to take the opportunity to go settle this. He goes to the location of the battle, and he notices there are more drones than the last time, which means this match is getting a lot of attention. Even though he doesn't like the idea, he realizes he has no choice but to play along with the game because it's the only lead he has to that man. When he gets into the building, he sees some guy practicing his shadowboxing, so he realizes that the guy must be sharp and incredibly fast. When the guy notices him, the guy apologizes for not noticing him sooner and explains that he was filming a video to stream on his channel before the match. From the research he's done, Geist knows his name is Takashi Mukai. He's a combat sports YouTuber. Geist shakes his hand and introduces himself, so Takashi says he watched his last match and admits that he has a completely different vibe now. Takashi asks him if he's really the same person, and Geist says he is. Intrigued, Takashi says he seems pretty mature for a high schooler and wonders if he's just imagining things. Geist realizes that Takashi is pretty sharp, and he's quite observant, which is expected of a former boxer. According to the info he dug up online, Takashi is a former pro boxer, a skilled fighter who was once ranked 15th in the world in the heavyweight division. But years ago, his opponent died in a match sponsored by a major corporation, which caused his so-called ring tragedy that made him retire. Geist dug up some videos of his past matches, and he saw that he was an infighter boxer who excelled in agility and close-quarters combat. His specialty is closing the distance in an instant with a right hook. Even though he's retired, it's clear that he hasn't slacked in his daily training as a combat sports YouTuber. And the difference in their physical strength is quite obvious from what Geist observed from his shadowboxing. Even with his skills from his previous life, winning against him in Kisuk's body is going to be difficult. Before the match begins, Takashi tells Geist that the movements in the second half of his last match were incredible, and they didn't look like something a normal high school kid would do. He explains that a lot of his channel's viewers are expecting another amazing performance from him this time, so he asks Geist to go easy on him. Unlike the last time, Geist has had plenty of time to prepare. He memorized the layouts of the ruins they're fighting in, and he's run simulations for any unexpected situations. The match soon begins, so Geist starts running the other way. His plan is to see how Takashi moves and then proceed based on his simulations. In an instant, Takashi runs to his side and tells him he knows he's planning some kind of trick. This speed surprises Geist, and he realizes this guy is even faster in a real fight. Geist realizes that he's done for if Takashi closes the distance since he's good at close combat. Geist tries to run the other way, but Takashi tells him he doesn't think Geist can match his speed no matter how much he runs. Takashi jokes that his comment section will get pretty toxic if they don't start trading blows, so he aims a punch at Geist. Geist dodges the punch, but he gets scraped because of the speed. Takashi is surprised he could dodge that, so he goes in for another punch. Geist realizes he's using his specialty right hook, which is not going to end up well. Takashi goes for his right hook, but is surprised when Geist blocks it. He's surprised Geist can block his hook at such a close range, and he admits that he's pretty good. He quickly jumps back and guesses that Geist has something up his sleeve, and Geist does. Geist had expected that he'd throw his signature right hook because that's how he moves during his matches as a pro boxer, and he knew that taking the hook head-on would be game over for him. Because of that, he put an iron plate in his hand to block the attack. That surprises Takashi, and he wonders if Geist is really a high schooler to have come this prepared. Takashi doesn't think it looks good on his stream if a total amateur with no boxing experience can stop his signature move, and he believes Geist must be getting a ton of like points. To even things out, he rushes him again, but Geist blocks it with his iron plate. That surprises Takashi, so he starts to punch rapidly with both hands while Geist tries to block it. Geist realizes the punches are coming in fast and heavy, and all he can do is guard because there are no openings. At this rate, he knows this body won't hold out. Meanwhile, Takashi realizes Geist is tougher than he thought, and his points from his viewers won't go up, so he decides to break out a secret strategy. Takashi attempts another right hook, so Geist blocks it, but it's a distraction, and Takashi lands a left hook in his chest. This makes him stumble, so Takashi comes in with his right hook, but Geist dodges that and jumps back. The viewers love how Takashi landed the body blow after pretending to land a right hook, and they wonder how Kisuk can turn this situation around. In the ruin, Takashi wonders if the comments got hyped up after he pulled that move. He adds that he knows that his opponents know about his signature right hook, so he uses their carefulness against them. Geist realizes Takashi is strategic, and he's adapting his fighting style in response to his movements. Since Takashi has absolute confidence in his speed, Geist decides to use that against him, so his eyes turn blue again. Takashi realizes he's thinking up a plan to beat him, but he says he can't wait, and he closes the distance to finish Geist off. He comes in hot with his punches again, but Geist blocks them. While punching, Takashi wonders why Geist looks so calm when he's supposed to be frantically trying to defend against the punches. He gets a bad feeling, and after Geist deflects another one of his punches, Geist swings in with his right hook, which Takashi barely dodges. He rushes back, realizes that was a close one, and he can't believe Geist was able to do that, and he wonders who he really is. At this point, he becomes tense and comes in hot with more punches, and Geist keeps blocking. He had hoped to hit Takashi the last time, but he guesses this body couldn't keep up with him. And he realizes this body is reaching its limit, and the next hit might be his last chance. While Takashi is punching, he realizes Geist is thinking up a plan, but he believes Geist can't figure out his right hook just because he could deflect it once. Suddenly, Geist dodges Takashi's punch, and he launches a punch at his face, and it shocks Takashi that he didn't try to deflect him this time. Geist used a counterblow, a punch thrown with exquisite timing to meet a fast opponent, which adds their own speed and body weight to the blow, creating damage that's greater than a normal punch. This way, Geist was able to use Takashi's speed to compensate for the punching power that Kisuk's body lacks. However, successfully landing such a counter requires exceptional kinetic vision, and he wouldn't have been able to fight against Takashi in peak condition, so he waited for Takashi's weakness to reveal itself. While watching the videos of Takashi's matches, Geist picked out the reason for many of his losses, which is that he'd run out of stamina early from overusing wide right hooks that rely on his speed. So when Geist noticed Takashi sweating more and his breath growing ragged, he knew the sharpness of his speed had reduced. That made it easier for Geist to land the counterblow using Kisuk's body. Takashi remains on the ground for a while, but he later crawls up to his knees. Takashi starts to shiver as it seems he's taken some serious damage, and he decides he can't lose in a place like this. Motivated by that rage, he comes in for another right hook. Geist tries to move his arm, but he's shocked when it doesn't move. Geist realizes that his body has accumulated damage and exhaustion, and he realizes that he's underestimated Takashi. Meanwhile, Takashi tells himself that he can't afford to lose. He knows he has to win for the sake of his family, Susanna. Suddenly, Takashi looks to the side, and he sees Susanna standing there, so he wonders why she's here. When he turns forward to fight, Geist leaps into the air and lands a roundhouse kick on Takashi. Takashi wonders what kind of person he is, but he decides to dodge the attack and then counterattack to win. He blocks the initial attack, but he doesn't notice that Geist is throwing another kick with his second leg without looking at him, and that lands in his face and knocks him to the ground. Takashi is shocked that this guy can use a double continuous roundhouse kick, and he wonders how this guy knows Taekwondo. He starts to see little dolphins, and his lights soon go out. Takashi flashes back to the time when his opponent died in the ring during his fight. This greatly enraged him, and his wife tried to tell him it was an accident, and he's not to blame. But he shut her up after drowning himself in liquor. Takashi believes the world is calling him a murderer, and he accuses his wife of being one too deep down. She tries to tell him she doesn't believe that, but he tells her to get out. Since that time, he's not been able to see his wife or daughter. Several years later, he started streaming videos to overcome his despair and regret. Sometime later, he received a letter from his wife that Susanna had made the charm for him, hoping that her dad could become the world champion. This charm made Takashi happier than even his championship belt. From that time, he planned to become more famous and make more money to be able to get his family back. In the present, Takashi lies there unable to move, and Geist is announced as the winner. The commentator goes wild about the fact that Takashi lost to a weak high school boy. Geist picks up the charm, and he realizes he would have almost lost if Takashi hadn't suddenly stopped, allowing him to land 2 consecutive wide swinging roundhouse kicks. He wonders what Takashi was even looking at, and when he looks around, he sees a girl standing there. The girl asks him why he's doing something like this, and it turns out to be Monica. Geist wonders what she's doing here. And when the drone notices her intrusion, Geist drags her out so they can leave there. After escaping the place, Monica pants profusely, but Geist asks her why she was at the abandoned building. She tells him she came to see him because he looked strange when they met yesterday, so he asks her how she knew he was there. She reminds him that his phone and hers are sharing location data because of what happened with Chinatsu in case something happens. Geist realizes he didn't take note of the tracking app on Kisuk's phone, which was careless of him. That night, Geist heads out and jumps down from very dangerous spots. He's doing parkour, an athletic discipline originating from France. Due to its flashy and acrobatic movements, it's often seen as a risky extreme sport, but in reality, it's a scientific training method based on its own unique philosophy. It is not about enjoying death-defying thrills, but it's about understanding the functional limits of one's own physical abilities and then pursuing one's full potential. Even though it's dangerous, it's the quickest way to learn how to use this body. While checking the muscle mass in his arms and legs, the range of motion in his joints, and other things, he's able to push them to their limit. He can learn what his current self can and cannot do. Geist's physical functions have been severely limited in this body, and that's not just because this body is generally weaker than those of his opponents, but also because he wasn't used to this body. It'll be difficult to perform like he did with his body, but he believes his fighting style should be a whole lot better if he gets accustomed to this body. While he's training, he remembers how Monica asked him if he took Sakia up on the shady offer he told him about. 2 hours ago, he decided to be honest with Monica about Susano since she saw what happened. In the flashback, she can't believe this and tells him that something is wrong with him. She wonders why he suddenly cut his hair, and she asks him to stop before something dangerous happens. However, Geist knows he can't stop here until he tracks down the man who killed him, and he also helps Kisuk raise money for Chinatsu. Geist tells Monica that quitting isn't an option, especially because they don't know when Chinatsu's heart is going to give out, so they need to get her a heart transplant soon. She'd have surgery overseas, and insurance won't cover that. The estimate of all their expenses is at least 500 million yen, and Geist knows this was the reason Kisuk chose to join the Susanoo battle. Even though Geist knows this has nothing to do with him, he decides he'll try to honor Kisuk's feelings as long as he's in this body. Geist cheerfully assures her that he'll be fine, and she doesn't need to worry, especially because he believes he's gotten stronger lately. However, Monica asks him why he has to be the one to do something so dangerous. She asks him why he didn't talk to her about it and admits that she knows she's unreliable and powerless. She becomes agitated and starts to cry, then asks him if he considers her so unimportant and runs off despite Geist's attempt to stop her. In the present, he considers how he'd rather not get involved in this mess, but he has to do something about it. Because he's distracted, he misses the railing he's supposed to grab while hopping over it and falls headlong to his death. Luckily, he's caught by a tree underneath the railing. When he returns home, Chinatsu is shocked to see his state and asks him what happened to him. He jokingly tells her he tripped again, so Chinatsu asks him if he fought with Monica. Surprised, Geist asks her why she asks, so she says she called her a while ago and she sounded really down. Chinatsu guesses that Monica must have told him that his new hairstyle doesn't look good on him, so she jokingly admits that she thinks it looks wild. She eventually tells Geist that he needs to make it up to her, and she says she won't play mediator like she used to because they're not kids anymore. She says that having a hopeless big brother makes a little sister worry, and Geist remembers his own little sister who had told him he's hopeless without her. When he freezes, Chinatsu asks him what's wrong, so he apologizes, and she tells him to apologize to Monica at school the next day. Geist remembers that he's a student here, so the next day he heads to school. On his way in, he sees Monica looking dejected, and he tries to stop her, but some guy standing nearby asks him what's with his new haircut. Geist wonders who this guy is, so the guy who clearly has a bully vibe asks Geist if he thinks he looks cool. The guy grabs Geist and suggests they have a chat. The guy takes Geist to the back of the school and tells him he didn't expect that he'd win 2 fights in a row. Immediately, Geist realizes this must be the guy who invited Kisuk to fight in Susano, Sakia Yuji. Sakia says he's feeling pretty proud as the one who got him in. Before now, Geist had hacked into the school's database to get a hold of Sakia's profile. Sakia's attitude in class is poor, and he has many unexcused absences, which is typical of a delinquent student. According to the school's unofficial website, Sakia's reputation is terrible among the students. He's involved with robbery, extortion, illegal drugs, and arranging shady part-time jobs. There are also rumors that he's the leader of a small criminal group. However, despite doing so many high-profile things, he's never had an issue with the police, and there's a rumor about why this is. Someone on the website said that he heard Sakia is protected by some crazy underground organization, so the police can't touch him. Geist wonders if this mysterious organization is the one that runs Susanoo, and he wonders what Sakia's connection with the organization is. When Sakia notices he's silent, he asks Geist if he's scared. So Geist decides to play dumb for now. He cheerfully asks Sakia what he can do for him, so Sakia tells him this is about his cut, obviously. He reminds Geist that he only earned that money thanks to his introduction, so he has to give him his share as a sign of gratitude since that's the deal. Sakia points out that the prize money for a D-rank fight is 1 million, so Geist should have 2 million since he won twice. Sakia offers to give him a discount and says he'll take 1,800,000.0 yen since it's his first time, so Geist pretends to be shaken and protests that he can't do that. He had wondered why Sakia called him here, and he now realizes he's just trying to shake some money out of him, which means he's just a petty thug. Geist guesses that he's not important enough to be part of that mysterious organization. He decides to just bluff his way through this. Suddenly, one of the gang members asks Sakia why they don't just take Monica as payment instead of the money since she has a nice body. The guy says he'd rather have that than the money, but Geist grabs his shirt and he realizes his body is moving on its own. Shocked, the big guy asks him who on earth he thinks he is and tries to punch him, but Geist uses his own punch to push his face into the ground. Geist finishes the guy with a punch, and his eyes and surroundings change into the usual deadly blue aura he has. This shocks the others, and when they check on the big guy, they realize he's out cold. Suddenly, an adult catches them and rushes to ask what they're doing there. Sakia quickly tells the others they have to leave, and he figures that Geist is not a normal person because of how he moved just now. Because of that, he realizes the last two fights weren't a fluke, so the guys make a run for it. While they run off, Geist hopes this doesn't turn into a bigger problem for him. The man comes to check if the person is alright, but it turns out to be Takashi, who's shocked to find out that it was Geist all along. Later, they have a chat, and Takashi says he came close because the person looked familiar. He says he didn't expect to run into him again today after just seeing him the day before yesterday. So Geist asks him what he's doing at the school. Takashi explains that he's a graduate of this school, and he says he got an offer to become a coach for the boxing club, but he decided to accept even though he was going to turn it down at first. He asks Geist if he knows about why he retired from his boxing career. But when Geist says nothing, Takashi brings up the disaster that happened in the ring, which caused his separation from his family. He decided to become a YouTuber and join Susanoo, hoping that he'd get famous and rich so he could get his family back. He admits that he now believes that's a shallow dream, but after Geist knocked him out, he remembered something. He remembered that his family used to smile while watching him devote himself earnestly to boxing. Apparently, his daughter contacted him for the first time in years after he lost to Geist. She told him about her life in middle school and how she always watches his videos. What made him cry was when she said she liked her dad better when he was a boxer than as a YouTuber, and it made him realize that the money and the fame were just for himself. He now realizes that what his daughter wanted for him was to look forward from his past, so Takashi says he's decided to face boxing seriously one more time. Geist pulls out one of the dolphin charms that fell off that day and says he was looking for a way to send it back to him. Takashi is surprised to see it, so Geist apologizes for taking it and says he was going to return it back to him, but something unexpected caused him to leave abruptly. Geist asks him if it's a gift from his kid, and he says it is. And that makes Geist remember how his sister gave him a good luck charm. While they're there, Geist gets a notification of a new battle, and he's shocked when he sees his new opponent. That night, Monica thinks about how she ran away from Kisuk because she couldn't face him. She knows she can't keep going on like this, but doesn't know how to resolve it. Suddenly, a bus drives past her, and someone pulls her into the bus. That night, the Susanoo battle has a special promotion match. The chosen venue is the old school building of a certain high school in Tokyo that's slated for demolition. The commentator announces that Kisuk is completely unknown, but he's taken down powerhouse fighters, and he's a D-rank fighter. Because Kisuk has claimed 2 consecutive victories, they set up a promotion match for him this time, and he'll be promoted at a really fast speed if he wins this match. Meanwhile, Geist can't believe they chose Kisuk's old high school area as the fighting arena. Moreover, he knows his opponent is a C-rank fighter, Sakiya Yuji. Usually, a high number of Sakiya's opponents forfeit mid-match because he has a reputation for a very dominant style, and they wonder if the same will happen to Kisuk. Geist can't believe he has to fight Sakiya so soon, especially since he watched the archives of his past fights before he came here. In all of the videos, there didn't seem to be a huge gap in skill between him and his opponents, but most of them lost their will to fight during the fight, which is weird. As the match is about to begin, Sakiya tells Geist that he's going to crush him. When the match begins, Sakiya runs towards him with an expandable baton. Sakiya swings it at him, but Geist jumps out of the way. Sakiya tries to hit his face with it again, certain that there's no way he can dodge in such close range, but Geist manages to bend backwards to avoid getting hit. Sakiya feels it's a fluke, he keeps swinging, but Geist dodges it every time. While dodging, Geist realizes Sakiya's form isn't bad, which must mean he must have kendo experience, which could be a black belt. He believes Sakiya's probably never lost in a simple brawl between delinquents, but it's easy for Geist to dodge him. Geist realizes that the effects of his parkour are starting to show, and he's getting used to this body. Eventually, Sakiya tells Geist that just because he got a little stronger doesn't mean he should get carried away. He asks Geist to take a look at the school building across from them, and when Geist looks, he notices the other gang members holding Monika hostage while caressing her. Geist realizes Sakiya wins by taking hostages to threaten his opponents and torture them for his own amusement, and he warns him about what will happen if he resists because they're going to have a taste of Monika. He tells Geist he wonders what kind of noise she'll make when he touches her right in front of him, and Geist realizes Sakiya is a sadist who gets pleasure from torturing those he looks down on. Even though Geist feels bad about the present situation, he can't forfeit his goal of finding the organizers behind Susanoo by letting Sakiya win. When Sakiya swings at him again, his body freezes, causing Sakiya to land a blow on Geist's forehead. Geist wonders why his body has suddenly frozen again, and Sakiya calls him a good boy. Geist realizes he can't move his body, so Sakiya strikes him again, and he wonders if the body is rejecting his will. He remembers this feeling from when he grabbed the big guy and pummeled him. He knows that the only person who can do this is Kisuk, and he realizes Kisuk is alive inside this body. Eventually, Sakiya tells Geist that he might accept his surrender if he begs for forgiveness, but Geist's eyes suddenly light up in a blue aura. This pisses Sakiya off, so he tries to wipe the cockiness off his face with his baton and smashes the baton into his face multiple times. The commentator wonders what's wrong with Geist and why he can't do anything against Sakiya's assault. Meanwhile, one of the gang members tells Monika that it's her fault that her boyfriend is getting beaten to a pulp. Meanwhile, Monika cries and hopes that Kisuk would run. While that's happening, the big guy behind her gets a sneak peek of her jugs, which makes his mouth water, so he decides to cop a feel. Before he can do that, the other guy stops him and reminds him that Sakiya told him to save the fun for last. The big guy, Kano, wonders what the issue is with having a little taste, and the last guy, Suzuka, agrees because all they get is scraps after Sakiya's had his fun. Kano starts to untie Monika so they can have their fun first, and Monika realizes these guys are going to defile her. Once he unties her, she makes a run for it, but she gets stuck at the window because she's unable to open it. The guy soon finds her, and Kano tells her she's an idiot because this is the 4th floor and there's nowhere to run. Kano mentions that forcing a girl who's trying to run is a turn-on, but the third guy tells Kano that Sakiya is going to beat him to a pulp later. After Monika opens the 4th floor window, she spots a nearby pipe and climbs down. This shocks the guys, so they try to stop her from getting herself killed, but Monika keeps going down the pipe. Suddenly, the pipe detaches from the upper one. Meanwhile, Sakiya keeps smashing Geist's face, and Geist wonders if this is how it's going to end. He tries to speak to Kisuk since he knows he must be the one trying to stop the body. He tells Kisuk that he's desperate to save that girl, and he explains that he admires his resolve, but he tells him not to believe that Sakiya is not honorable to keep his word, not to touch Monika if he doesn't fight. Geist tells him he feels bad about the twist of fate that caused a dead man to steal his body, but he pleads with him to lend him his body for a little bit longer, and he promises to protect what's precious to him. Sakiya tries to hit Geist again, but this time he's able to jump out of the way. Annoyed, Sakiya calls him a bastard and wonders if he's defying him, but Geist realizes Kisuk has given him permission. Geist promises to keep his word, but Sakiya reminds Geist that he's going to mess up Monika. Suddenly, Geist hears Monica shout as the pipe she's hanging from bends backwards, and he wonders what she's doing. He quickly rushes towards Sakia, who tries to hit him, but is surprised when Geist jumps past him. Geist lands behind Sakia, jumps over the railing, and leaps off the 4th floor. The commentator believes this is a suicide attempt, but he soon notices that Geist is holding on to a fire hose. When Monica's pipe breaks, she starts to fall to the ground, but Geist swings with the hose and catches her midair. She's surprised to see him, but he tells her she's reckless and finally lands on the ground. When they look behind him, Sakia realizes things have gone south, so he leads his men to attack Geist all at once. Geist wonders if he can take 4 people at once while he's injured, especially while trying to protect Monica too. When one of the gang members rushes at him, Geist knocks his lights out with a punch to the jaw. Suddenly, someone announces that showing up with a group to a one-on-one brawl is strictly forbidden. The man demands to know what the meaning of this is and wonders why others have intruded in what should have been a standard one-on-one street fight. Geist realizes that the hooded man who's interrogating them is Takashi, so he wonders why he's here. Geist asks him what he's doing here, but Takashi goes into a battle stance and says they'll talk later. Suzuka brings a knife to a fist fight and tries to slash Geist, while Kano tries to ram them with a chair so they'll hand over Monica. Geist jumps over Kano's head, and he asks Takashi to take Monica and run away, but Monica protests that it's dangerous for Kisuk to fight alone. However, Takashi grabs her and starts to run, so Geist tells him he owes him one. Monica protests that Takashi let go of her so Kisuk doesn't get hurt, but Takashi tells her she'd only get in the way, and he tells her to focus on escaping if she really cares about his safety. Confused, Monica asks him who he is and why he was there, so he explains that he owes Takashi a small favor, and he knew that his opponent is a man with quite a bad reputation. Apparently, Takashi was streaming the match, and he noticed something was off about Kisuk during the match because he wasn't trying to dodge the attacks at all. Because of that, he rushed here with the car because he suspected that Sakia was using dirty tactics. When Takashi puts Manaka in the car, she pleads with him to forget about her and go assist Kei, especially because he can't fight 3 people alone. However, Takashi tells her that this was what Kisuk asked him to do, and he drives off. Meanwhile, Kano tries to smash Geist with an iron bench, but Geist dodges it, but the drones keep recording. In an instant, Geist covers the distance and rams his knee into Kano's chest, knocking him to the ground. Behind him, Suzuka charges him with a knife, but Geist makes him stick the knife in the bench. After that, he kicks Suzuka in the face and knocks him out. Meanwhile, the commentator keeps describing Geist's incredible speed and how he adapts to his environment. Later, Sakia realizes his men are out cold, and he calls them useless trash. Geist turns to him and tells him he's the only one left, so he tells Sakia to come at him. He asks Sakia if he's afraid of an injured man, or if he's now become a coward since he doesn't have his leverage. Annoyed, Sakia rushes at him with the baton, and Geist, who had intentionally provoked him, waits for him to get close. He knows Sakia's warped self-esteem is fragile enough that a little taunt is enough to destroy it. Sakia tries to slam him with the baton, but Geist knows that his technique is going to be dulled because he's lost his composure. Suddenly, Geist grabs his hand midair and throws him face down into the ground, smashing his lips. Sakia can't believe what's happening, and he soon sees Geist lifting up the baton to finish him off. Shortly after, Geist wins the match, and he used the legendary technique called weaponless disarm to finish. The viewers are amazed, and one guy wonders if Kisuk is good with swords too because the level of his strength is unthinkable. Later, Geist realizes he needs to get treated quickly because he's lost too much blood, but a light soon shines on him and the police spoil the party. Geist realizes this is bad. As he braces for the worst, the police rush to capture Sakia and his gang since they are the ones they were after. Later, Chinatsu asks Kane if she's working late today, and Kane apologizes because she's in the middle of an important story. Worried, Chinatsu tells her not to push herself too hard, but Kane tells her not to be worried. Kane suggests that the 3 of them go get something to eat when they return. She asks about Kisuk because she heard that he fell down the park stairs last night and got hurt, and Shinatsu admits that her big bro came back home covered in scratches, and Kane says he's so clumsy. Meanwhile, Geist watches the news about the arrest of Sakia's gang the night before. The news of their arrest dominated every TV channel that morning, and Geist is surprised that it was reported so extensively just a day after it happened. He also found the charges unbelievable. Apparently, the gang had been involved in robbery, sexual assault, and drug trafficking among several other crimes despite being minors. The thing that delighted the media was the fact that Seikiya's father is the active Deputy Commissioner General of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. The media speculated that Seikiya's father, a high-ranking political leader, might have a hand in covering up the crimes. However, Geist doesn't seem to agree with that. In a flashback, Geist tells Takashi that his new opponent is a C rank. Takashi is surprised that he has a promotion match after just 2 fights, but Geist doesn't understand what he means. Takashi explains that there are ranks from S to D. Newcomers start at the lowest class, which is D, and they're set up to have promotion matches based on their battle record and popularity with the viewers. Apparently, with one's rank going up just by 1, the treatment one gets is wildly different, which is why all Susanoo participants are so desperate to get promoted. Apparently, C-rank fighters get their crimes overlooked by the police, which surprises Geist. In the present, Geist remembers that there was something off about the action of the police the night before. They ignored him and arrested Seikiya. And if the rumor Takashi mentioned is true, this would mean that Susanoo's management has even the state's authority in its pocket. He wonders if the people who killed him are that powerful. Shortly after, the reporter explains that Seikiya got 3rd place in the National Kendo Championship when he was in middle school and was the leader in his training center. Even though 3rd place in the Nationals is a great result, his father rebuked him for not taking 1st place. Apparently, anything other than 1st place in their elite family is considered worthless, and this is when Seikiya's life started to go off the rails. The news speculates that it might be the educational abuse in an elite family that might have driven Seikiya to such violent crimes. Moments later, Chinatsu comes to ask Geist why he's watching the TV with such a scary look on his face. Geist playfully tells her it's nothing, so she tells him because she's been calling him for a while because Monica came to pick him up and she commends him for making up with her. When Kisuke steps out, Monica greets him, and they head to school. Geist asks her if she's really alright, so she tells him she is thanks to him. She says that Takashi, the boxing club coach, was the one who took her home afterwards. When they get to school, Geist suddenly bows to apologize to Monica as she walks away. This surprises her, so she asks him what he's apologizing for since Seikiya is the one who was wrong. Geist explains that he got her involved in this because he was careless, but he also adds that it might not be easy to quit Susanoo right now. Monica tells him that last night was scary, not only because of what those guys almost did to her, but also watching him get beat up. She worries that he might die someday if he keeps doing those streaming events, and the thought unsettles her. However, she realizes that he's serious about this because it's the only way he can save Chinatsu, so she won't try to stop him anymore. But in return, she asks him to let her help him. Even though she can't do much, she just wants to support him even if it's just a little. This surprises Geist, but Monica soon sprints off for class because they'll soon be late. While she's running, she notices that Kisuke has the same face, voice, and manner of speech, but there's something different about him. As she recalls how he protected her, she wonders if he's really Kisuke. Meanwhile, Kane calls out a person named Takura and explains that she's from the weekly Rain paper. She says she came by the day before and hopes he'll speak to her today, but she gets no reply. When he doesn't open the door, she tells him she'll say it through the door in that case. She tells Takura he once belonged to the Special Forces unit under the Ministry of Defense, and he was involved in the operation to rescue the embassy staff 8 years ago. She adds that it's surprising that the Japanese Special Forces were mobilized to resolve a foreign terrorist incident, but the person who resolved this incident was someone that's not in the Special Forces or the local military. It was a single operative, and there's a rumor about him that sounds like a made-up story about someone named Geist. She says she's been investigating this person, but the door suddenly swings open, and Takura asks her what she's planning to do with the information about Ghost. Later, Takura lets her in and tells her she's pretty impressive because she must be a very good journalist to be able to dig up Murakumo since it was a unit that doesn't officially exist. She asks him if Murakumo was a Special Forces unit specially established by the Ministry of Defense. So he tells her the name was borrowed from the divine sword that protects the nation. However, he believes they weren't divine or even as useful as a worthless dull blade. He cites the incident in Indonesia because they couldn't do anything there because of so-called high-level political considerations. Keen asks him if it was because of the power struggle over the mining rights for the rare earth deposits sleeping within Dornish's territory because of the political maneuvering between nations. It impresses Takura that she's researched that much. Apparently, 8 years ago in the Republic of Dornesia, Takura, who was a squad leader, demanded from the base to know how long they'll keep waiting and putting the lives of the hostages in danger. Dornesia's rare earth elements had only just been discovered at the time. Because Dornesia didn't have technology, they couldn't mine them independently. Because of that, there was a silent standoff between major powers over the mining rights. On the comms, Lieutenant Takura is told to watch his mouth because the decision of the higher-ups is absolute. Other major powers that wanted to take over the mining rights didn't want Japan to take the credit for resolving the terrorist incident to gain a favorable advantage in acquiring those rights. As a result, their unit was forced to stay put even though they could have saved the lives of the hostages that were right in front of them. Suddenly, one of Takura's men informs him that communication with the embassy has been restored. Apparently, all the terrorists have been subdued and the hostages are safe. The report shocks Takura and his men, especially because they didn't hear anything about another unit making an assault. Suddenly, a man appears on the roof of the building that seemed like a ghost. Apparently, he had eyes as cold as ice, a quiet killing intent wrapped around his entire body, and a presence that you could barely detect. The man started to fade away, and Takura was only able to see him for a short period. In the present, Kanai is surprised to hear that Geist really existed. She expresses her gladness in getting this interview because she's finally been able to get a testimony from the first person to ever see Geist. However, Takura tells her to stop because he didn't let her into his room to talk about Geist but to warn her. This confuses her, so he tells her he was once a member of the Ministry of Defense's Special Forces, which is an elite background. But just like him, she'll end up a miserable, unemployed, middle-aged person if she doesn't turn back. He says he barely survives in a grimy cheap apartment, just surviving on his severance pay, and he says he ended up like this because of Geist. He tells her she'll meet the same fate if she tries to get involved with him, and he asks her to give up on the investigation for her sake and for her family's sake. As he walks away, Kanai admits that she knows there are things that are untouchable in this world, but she can't stop her investigation until she uncovers the truth, because the person who took her sister's life might have been Geist. This shocks Takura, and he remains speechless. Sometime later, two men talk about how the progress of their experiment hasn't been great. Apparently, the compatibility rate with the new drug isn't consistent between test subjects. One of them suggests they push the higher-ups to increase the number of specimens, and the other guy also wonders why they've not been able to find the origin. While they're talking, a lady vacuums the floor nearby, and one of them tells her to quiet down and do her cleaning farther away. The lady quickly apologizes and walks away, so the other man tells his colleague that this isn't something they should be discussing with outsiders hanging around. They head into a secure path of the establishment to keep talking, but the cleaning lady continues her work. Meanwhile, Geist watches her through a scope, and he confirms that this is where Izanami Pharmaceuticals is located. Izanami Pharmaceuticals is a company that has rapidly grown in recent years, and the reason Geist is here is because of something that happened before. 5 hours ago, he met with Takashi to know where his fight money was deposited from. With his permission, he dug into the flow of the funds behind the money from the fights, and he compared them with the route of the money he's also personally earned. Both payments pass through various companies in a complicated chain, but the common point between them is this Izanami Pharmaceuticals. In the present, he prepares to infiltrate the building, and he fires a grapple hook towards the building to swing towards it. He hopes to be able to find information about the man who killed Geist if he searches this building. In a flashback, some lady tries to hack into a system but realizes the protection is tough. She eventually hacks in successfully to get the blueprint of the military facility, which is their next target. This happened 7 years ago, and she turns to Geist, who tells her she's as sharp as ever, referring to her with the name Amain. She jokingly tells him to praise her more and adds that as long as he has her special hacking tool called Uzum, he can do this on his own. She also gives him the password to the dark web where she stored the program so he can download it on his own. Surprised, he asks her if she's sure about this since this is how she makes a living, but Amani tells him it'd be a bigger loss if her best customer died. She asks him to use the tool to raise his survival rate even just a bit. Geist thanks her, and she tells him that besides that, it's no big deal for him and goes to caress his hand. Geist becomes uncomfortable, but a hand soon lands on Amani's head. It turns out to be some other girl who reminds Amon that she's always telling her not to get too close to the teacher. Amon tells the little girl to go easy on her, but they soon get into an argument about whether she's a little girl or not. In the present, Geist uses Amani's tool to get the blueprints for the Izanami building. Amani is an informant, a woman of unknown nationality and age who has an outstanding ability to process information. In the past, she saved Geist many times. Using the Uzum tool, Geist found out that the power consumption was much higher on the top floor than on the other floor, which means there's definitely something there. He soon reaches the top floor and unlocks the door. When he enters, he finds several capsules, and he's surprised to see the mysterious logo on the pin of his killer there. When he touches one of the capsules, someone dashes past him to cut him, but he manages to jump out of the way. When Geist lands on his feet, he wonders how he didn't sense the attacker's presence. The attacker also seems to be good with a knife, so he realizes he's a pro. Soon enough, the attacker rushes at him with the knife again, but Geist dodges several times and retreats. He also notices his movements are strange and familiar, but the attacker closes in on him. As he's about to be attacked, someone drops a stun grenade, and the cleaner suddenly grabs Geist's hand and drags him away. The woman throws him into a garbage disposal hatch, and they fall into a nearby garbage container. The woman calls him an idiot and says she had to use her precious escape route because of him, especially since she went into so much trouble to sneak into his enemy, but it's now all for nothing. While she laments, Geist is surprised because of the great resemblance she has, but he soon calls her name, which surprises Amain. Shortly after, Amain takes Geist in her car, and she tells him there's no way a scrawny idiot like him is Geist. She says her Geist is more good-looking, sexier, and cooler. As she tries to look for a place to drop him, Geist calls out a certain code. This confuses her, so he tells her that it's the password she gave him, and he says he was able to use it to download the hacking tool. He says her Uzoom came in handy even though he rolled his eyes at the silly password. Amani looks at him dumbfounded, so she asks him the name of her first love to confirm it's really him. He tells her the name, so she asks him if he knows the song she once played at her funeral. He tells her that also, so she asks him what the last digits of the password mean. He tells her it's the date they both first met. This makes a modest scream, and she soon starts to lose control of the steering. The thing is, terrorism and military conflict are worldwide problems. Ghost special agents, Geist, solve them in secret. Like ghosts, no one must know they exist, but ghosts need helpers, information brokers like Amani, gunsmiths, and suppliers. These are usually the only people that can know Geist's real identity. Later on, they enter into a subway, and Geist asks about Yuan. So Amani tells him the old gunsmith is dead. He asks about some other people named Olivia Blitz and Stephen Lick, so she tells him that the CIA lady and her two subordinates are all dead. Geist realizes that most of his helpers are gone just 5 years after he was killed. Amani mentions that all the people tied to him are mostly gone, so Geist figures that they killed him and joined the organization of his killer. Geist asks her how she's been able to remain safe, so she tells him she's not easy to kill. She also tells him that one more person linked to Geist is still alive. She calls this person Takura, the Japanese curry girl, a hot-blooded lady that Geist kind of liked. However, after Geist died, she was said to have embezzled some money and got fired. While they're having this discussion, Kanai leaves Takura's house. In the subway, Amani tells him that there's no way Takura would have done that since she was very straightforward, so she was most likely framed. Amani soon leads them to the hideout, and she explains that the bunker was built for the final Finland battle in the Pacific War. Because it's not on any map, the country's forgotten it exists. She jumps on a bed and explains that they finally found it after running forever. Eventually, she points out that there's only one person Safety Geist cares about the most, and she tells him she'll be pissed if he dares apologize because of what happened to her or their other dead mates. Geist finally asks about Mina, so Amani says she's missing because she'd have shown up in her database if she were dead. Amani says Mina's definitely alive, and there's no way she'll die easily since she was Geist's only apprentice. She hands him a soft drink since minors can't drink booze and asks him how the heck he's now a high schooler after 5 years. Geist changes the topic and asks her if she picked up anything in Izanami, but she says Izanami's system is rock solid and can't be easily hacked. This surprises Geist because Amani's quite skilled, so she admits that it shattered her pride. She says she decided to spend 3 months as a cleaning lady, but eventually came up with nothing. Eventually, she says the only way to get close is to climb up the ranks with Susano and become champion. Meanwhile, Geist's killer watches the recording of the fight that happened between his guard and Geist, and his skills impress him. He wonders who this is and how he could make it all the way to the top floor without being noticed by security or his guard. He wonders who this mysterious person is, so he tells his guard, who seems to actually be a lady, to treat him well next time. The man considers it intriguing that this person fights like the person he knew before. He breaks the screen using his fingers and says they might need to begin an investigation. Sometime later, Monica teaches Chinatsu some math, which she easily understands. Chinatsu tells Monica she's a very good teacher because it wouldn't be this easy with her brother. She adds that her brother has been busy lately, so he doesn't have time to teach her as much. And she adds that for some reason, she thinks her big brother seems to have changed a little. She wonders if it's her fault that her brother is pushing himself too hard, and she feels like her brother is going far away. Monica remains unable to say anything because she knows Chinatsu's worries are spot on. She knows Kisuk is fighting for Chinatsu, and she wonders if Kisuk changed because he's pushing himself too hard to fight. She eventually grabs Chinatsu's hand and tells her it's okay. She reminds her that Kisuk is her brother and he's not going anywhere. She assures Chinatsu that she won't let Kisuk go anywhere. Monica decides she'll be the one to support Kisuk. Even though she considers herself weak and unreliable, she doesn't want to lose the kind person Kisuk used to be. Oddly, Chinatsu asks her if she's expressing love for her brother, and Manaka quickly drops her hands and becomes red in the face. Confused, she asks Chinatsu what she's talking about, but Chinatsu mimics how she said about not letting Kisuk leave her side and says it's love. However, Manaka corrects that she didn't say that, but Chinatsu tells Manaka she completely approves of him and her brother. She tells Manaka to tell him next time instead of telling her, but Manaka reminds her not to tease her. Eventually, Chinatsu thanks Manaka, which surprises her. Shortly after, Geist arrives, so Chinatsu steps out to welcome him. She's surprised to see him carrying in Kanai, whom he apparently found passed out drunk in the elevator hall. He puts her on a chair and says, "It looks like her interview didn't go well today." Soon after, Kane starts to talk about a fool who was just moping around forever. She rambles on about someone who told her he has no intention of getting involved with anyone anymore and calls the person a narcissistic pretty boy. Then she tries to tell Kisuk not to become a loser who's always hung up on the past like that. Geist doesn't know who she's talking about, so he just focuses on trying to get her shoes off. Later, Kane starts to feel sick, so Chinatsu rushes her into the toilet to puke. When Geist notices Monica, he's surprised, but he thanks her for looking out for Chinatsu while he was out. She tells him not to worry because she had fun, and she asks him what's wrong. Geist doesn't answer directly, but he tells her there's someone he wants her to meet tomorrow. The next day, Monica meets with a main, who used the alias Nene Amatsuka, who also introduces herself as Keisuke's manager. Because Monica looks confused, Takashi explains to her that when a Susanoo fighter reaches C-class, their earnings increase by an order of magnitude. But in exchange, they have to manage their own fights, analyze their opponent after a match is made, and negotiate the location. To save time and effort, most fighters ask for an outside contractor to be their manager, and those in C rank are allowed to form such teams of contractors called clans. Suddenly, Geist respectfully asks Takashi to join his clan, and Takashi tells him he's already joined in his mind. While the trio celebrate, Monica interrupts and asks who Amani is, so Geist says it's kind of a long story. Amani hugs Geist's hand and says she's tied to him by a common fate, which shocks Monica. She asks Geist what's going on, but he soon gets a notification on his phone and is unable to answer her. When he checks the notification, he learns that his opponent has been decided on. Meanwhile, in the back room of a sumo wrestling center, some 3 guys try to take down one guy, but he doesn't budge, which surprises them. They wonder if the guy, Ryoshindo, has roots growing out of his feet. Soon after, Reishindo's manager comes to inform him that his next opponent has been decided, and he learns it's a highly anticipated super rookie who was promoted to C rank in a short period of time. That excites Reishindo, who throws back 3 hefty men at once. He tells his manager that he hopes the opponent is more of a challenge than these guys. Sometime later, the clan head to the boxing club room in the old school building. Although it's scheduled to be demolished next year, Takashi suggests they use it as their clan's meeting place. Takashi notices the others aren't listening because they seem to be trying to resolve their love triangle. After getting the explanation, Monica tries to clarify that Amani is truly a friend of Kisuk's late father, just like she was told. Monica still doesn't seem convinced. So Geist explains that Amani used to work at a company that did business with his father, and he says he met her a few times when he went to his father's workplace a long time ago. He adds that she's a very capable person, but she likes to joke around a bit. So Amani apologizes for her behavior and tries to calm Monica down by saying she's into old men. Monica appears relieved and confirms that they are not in a relationship. Amani notices how relieved she is and finds it fun to tease such an innocent girl, just like the old days. Eventually, Monica mentions that it's clear that Amani looks to be about twice their age, and that hits Amani right in the face. When Amani turns around full of spite, Geist tells Monica to let her be, but Monica doesn't seem to know what's wrong. Soon enough, Takashi interrupts them, and they start to clean up the boxing club room. While cleaning, Amani tells Geist that they'll start to make mistakes in their story if they get too detailed. The night before, Geist and Amon discuss their future plans. In a flashback, Geist tells her he plans to become the champion of Susanoo, and he asks her if she knows what happens when he reaches that position. Amane tells him that the management of Susanoo will grant him any wish at that point according to what she's heard on the streets. Apparently, according to Japanese mythology, Izanami and Susanoo are parent and child gods, and Amani explains that she's obtained information that confirms that both companies are connected. From her experience infiltrating Izanami, she believes there's some credibility to them being able to grant him any wish based on their organizational power. Geist agrees that it might be true if they can control the police and the government. Later, Amani explains that it'll be hard to hack into their system using their usual methods, so she'll let the organization come to them instead. Geist says it won't be that easy, so she admits that no fighter has ever become the champion of Susanoo. But she asks him if there's ever been a mission the two of them have failed to complete. In the present, Amani admits that this next fight is going to be a problem, even though she had earlier said they've never failed at a mission. The size of Reishindo, who's an active sumo wrestler and a Makuchi wrestler for that matter, was unexpected. Confused, Manaka asks what Makuchi is, so Takashi explains that there are about 600 wrestlers in sumo. The top division is composed of the top 42 wrestlers, and those are called the Makuchi. Basically, a Makuchi is a pro among pros. As if that's not enough, Reishindo is 190 centimeters tall and weighs 200 kilograms, which means he's one of the super heavyweights among Makuchi wrestlers. The physical difference between him and Kisuke seems quite hopeless. Takashi tells Geist that from C rank on, he has the right to refuse a match, although that will cost him points and the risk of being demoted. Takashi explains that this opponent is just too much, and he advises Geist to refuse the match even though it's frustrating. However, Geist watches a video of Reishindo and points to the cloth around his waist, which he refers to as a kesho mawashi. Takashi says it's a mawashi, which a wrestler wears during the ring entering ceremony, which is usually a gift from the wrestler's sponsor. This surprises Geist, but he tells Takashi that he'll take the match, which shocks Takashi. Meanwhile, Keen watches a sumo match on TV. While she's chilling, Geist enters and is surprised to find Keen home early. Keen welcomes him and explains that she took a paid day off and says she was hoping they could all go out for dinner that night. However, she says she can't move right now because she had a bit too much to drink, so Geist tells her not to push herself. Geist asks her if Chinatsu went shopping, so Kane explains that she went to buy some headache medicine. She explains that Chinatsu is such a good girl and starts to lament that she's such a failure of a guardian. Kenny tells herself that she needs to get her act together, but she promises to find the truth before that happens, especially because it'll be for Kisuke and Shinatsu's sakes too. Later, Geist asks her if she's a fan of sumo, so she says she is, and she watches the Makuchi and Jiryo matches every day. She asks him if he's interested in sumo, so he tells her he is. 2 days later, the commentator welcomes everyone to this edition of the Susanoo battle, which includes a battle with a rarely seen size difference. The commentator explains that it's a fight between a giant and a dwarf, and he asked the viewers if Keisuke can defeat the giant, Reishindo. Meanwhile, Reishindo notices that this rising rookie he was told about is just a skinny kid, so he plans to snap his skinny body into two. The viewers watch in anticipation, and they can't believe what they're seeing. The commentator announces that the match will begin shortly, but Reishindo charges into Geist and carries him, telling him that he'll regret challenging the great Reishindo in his next life. Geist is completely shocked, and he soon finds himself on the ground. The commentator ignores the fact that the match hadn't officially started and starts to talk about how powerfully Reishindo threw Geist to the ground. Through his earpods, Reishindo's sponsor tells him to give the viewers a better show so they can get more views, but Reishindo tells him it's not over yet. Reishindo says there was no impact because the little punk dodged his charge. Shortly after, Geist gets back up, and the clan is relieved while watching the fight. Takashi admits he was worried that was the end, and he points out how Geist jumped back at the moment of the impact and cancelled out the force of the charge. Amani tries to reach Geist through the comms to ask him if he can still fight, and he tells her he's a little dizzy, but he's still good to go. Later, Reishindo calls Geist a little punk and tells him he did well to weather his charge, and admits that he's a little shocked that a novice could dodge it. Reishindo comes in hot with another charge, but Geist dodges completely this time. When Reishindo turns back to look at him, Geist lands a kick across his face. However, Geist is surprised when Reishindo doesn't move, but just jokes that it seems a bug landed on his face. It's clear that Reishindo is completely unscathed. Meanwhile, the clan is shocked since Kisuk's kick landed. In the match location, Reishindo charges at him again, but Geist runs out of the way. Geist realizes that a blow to the head won't work on the wrestler. Apparently, the force of a Makuchi wrestler's charge is about a ton. Meanwhile, Reishindo misses Geist when he charges at him and slams into a nearby truck and destroys that side of it. Apparently, Makuchi takes these types of charges to the head for 15 days every tournament, and it's like being in a car accident every day. Takashi remembers that Kisuk's ability to read his opponent's movements is top-notch, and he uses his opponent's movements to land counterattacks on them, but that seems hopeless now because of the physical difference. Roshindo tries to grab Geist again, but he dodges it by the skin of his teeth. He soon realizes that Roshindo is pretty fast for his size, and he knows he'll be down if he gets hit just once. To his surprise, Roshindo locks arms with him and jokingly asks him if he thought all he could do is push. He tells Geist that he's got 4 different moves, and he throws him face down. Takashi shouts through the comms to tell Geist not to resist, but to just let himself be thrown, and Geist does just that. He lets himself fall, and he does a somersault, allowing him to slip his arm out. Geist quickly creates distance, so Takashi asks him if he's okay. Geist tells him he wasn't slammed into the ground thanks to him, but he admits he hurt the left side of his chest, which is a small price to pay. Reishindo soon appears in front of him and asks him who he is. He tells him to eat some more chanko and bulk up, and he offers to make him his personal attendant if he does that. Reishindo remembers that his manager told him to liven up the match, but he offers to give Geist a handicap as a reward for holding out this long against him. He raises his hands up and tells him to come at him with any attack he has, and when Geist hesitates, Reishindo asks him if he's scared of an opponent that won't attack. Takashi tells Geist that this is a chance because even a wrestler won't come out unscathed if he can land a blow in a vital point. Takashi notices Reishindo opens the vital points on his center line, and he believes this carelessness will be his undoing because he's underestimating Kasuki too much. Geist asks Reishindo if he's sure he wants him to hit him, and Reishindo tells him to knock himself out. Immediately, Geist closes the distance. But as he jumps to land a hit, Reishindo tells him he's just kidding and reaches out to grab him because he's not stupid enough to take his attack. Geist realizes he's cooked, and Reishindo knocks him into the ground.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.